I remember being in the backseat of the car while my parents drove my sister and I to who knows where. I also remember that my dad would always play a CD with some old Mexican music on it. I hated how loud he would play it and how long it would go on for. I was so embarrassed being on those trips because I knew that everyone we passed by could hear how loud the music was. In those moments, I just wished I could teleport to just get away. Meanwhile, my parents didn't seem to care at all. In fact, they smiled, laughed, and sang along to every word the speaker would play. I hated it, and I hated that my parents didn't understand how embarrassing it was. Were they just blind to everything around them? 20 years later, and I finally know the answer is yes, they were blind. As hypocritical as it sounds, I do the same exact thing now. Even worse, I do it with the same exact songs. And every time Spotify recommends a song that my parents would blast in that car, I don't get annoyed or upset at all. Instead, I play it in its entirety, again and again and again. And every single time that I hear it, I remember something else from the days when I was getting up early on Saturdays to watch cartoons instead of getting up early to make it to work on time. I was harsh on my parents because I didn't understand how it felt to long for a moment in time when I didn't have responsibilities built up all around me, when I could just have fun and my only worry was what homework was due the next day. I didn't realize it as a kid, but life just gets so much harder the longer you live your life. The music and movies from my parents' childhood must have been like portals to the past for them, the same way it is now for me. A part of me wonders, if I could give up the life I have now just for one more day in that back seat, would I? The older I get, the more nostalgic I become for the past. As a matter of fact, it seems like the entire world feels the same way. People love to take in any type of content that lets them forget about how tough their lives are now. For the past decade, a lot of stories we've been seeing are ones that bring something from the past to the present, whether it's Stranger Things with the 80s decade, or another random reboot or sequel of a movie that no one asked for. Funny thing is, most of this stuff is targeted for kids, but it always ends up being the adults that consume it. And can you blame them? Life is hard, and these shows, movies, and games that get released allow adults to feel like kids again. The last thing we want to think about is when our next bill is due and how much we're going to have to work just to make enough to pay it. So if we want to forget all that, then what's the problem? People even love to get nostalgic for a time and place that they weren't a part of. Recently, I've started to get into Crayon Shin-chan, specifically the movies. If you've never heard about that, then I'll give a quick history lesson. Although first appearing in a different manga, Crayon Shin-chan began as its own manga series in 1990, depicting the life of the Nohara family in Japan. The Nohara family includes Hiroshi, the father,
ここ見てんの父ちゃん
Misae, the mother,
ただカバンの中身をチェック。
はいこれだ
なんで生持ってんだ。余計なもん入れんじゃないの。
Himawari, the baby sister,
すき焼き。
Shiro, the family dog,
からどうすればいいの。
とにかく新宿まで行ってしんちゃんのお腹からアクションストーンを取り出してアクションカードと合体させてアクション仮面を呼び出そう
シロ、いつから裏にそんな偉そうな口を聞けるようになったんだ。
and of course, Shinosuke, aka Shin-chan.
俺の原しんのすけ5歳、しんちゃんって呼んで。
はーいしんちゃん私のことはチョキって呼んでね
はい、チョキ。
しんちゃんチョキリーヌから離れて
やだ。ほら、狼のおじさんよりお人形の女の子、お人形の女の子よりピチピチのお姉さんが好きな男の子だもん。
The series told stories of Shin-chan and all of the messes he would drag his family into. Thanks to its combination of innocent mischief and often inappropriate humor, it quickly became a popular series that would get turned into an anime in 1992 and later get its first movie in 1993. It's become so popular since then that the series has been dubbed into multiple languages around the world and still has new episodes released, with their 33rd movie releasing this month at the time of recording. Now, admittedly, I knew of the Shin-chan character but had never watched anything related to it until recently when my Japanese friend told me I should give the movies a try. According to her, they're hilarious. So even though I was skeptical that our sense of humor might be different, I threw on some episodes to get me ready for the first movie. I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise to me when I actually found myself laughing constantly. I was surprised at how adult-like the humor could get for a series directed at kids. Shin-chan would often get fully naked and do goofy dances. Hiroshi would constantly lust over different women, always getting caught by Misae, and the dialogue and stories would always be goofy enough to get a laugh out of me. If the show was this funny, I couldn't wait to watch the movies. I was glad to find that the movies were just as funny, if not funnier than the show. I was laughing my way through the movies when suddenly I reached movie 9, Crayon Shin-chan, The Adult Empire Strikes Back. When it was over, it felt different from the ones before it. I wasn't laughing at all. Actually, I was crying. In this entry to the series, a new theme park called the 20th Century Expo opens in Shin-chan's town. It's designed for adults, filled with the sights, sounds, and smells from Japan's Showa-era during which they grew up. At the start, the expo seems like it's nothing more than just entertainment meant to allow the adults to reminisce about the good old days. But soon, it's revealed that the expo's creators, Ken and Chako, are weaponizing that sense of nostalgia in order to brainwash the town's grown-ups into permanently regressing into their old selves. One by one, they start leaving their jobs, their homes, and even abandoning their own kids to go live inside this recreated past. And suddenly, just like that, the movie becomes something more than just a children's story. Now, this movie was released in 2001, and to fully grasp its meaning, you first have to understand the situation Japan was facing at the time. You see, after World War II, especially from the 60s to the 80s, Japan experienced an economic miracle. Manufacturing surged, exports exploded, Japanese technology dominated the global market. The world was watching Japan and following its lead. But more than that, there was stability. People had lifetime careers, companies took care of their employees, society felt unified. And for many families, it was the first time they could afford a truly comfortable lifestyle. The future felt bright, but that sense of certainty didn't last. In 1991, Japan's economic bubble burst. The real estate and stock markets collapsed almost overnight. What followed became known as the Lost Decade, a period of deep economic stagnation, though in truth, its effects are still felt today. Young people graduated into a dead job market, job security vanished, birth rates plummeted, and perhaps worst of all, hope faded. So when The Adult Empire Strikes Back shows adults abandoning the present to return to a version of the past, it's not just some weird joke in a kid's movie. Nostalgia for the Showa-era isn't just about childhood memories. It's about mourning a promise that was never fulfilled. Okay, from here on out, I'm going to be getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, I highly suggest you click off and go watch it. But if you don't care or if you've already seen it, then let's continue. So when the children wake up and go to greet their parents like they would on any other day, something feels off. Their mom and dads are acting strange, like children. They're disobeying their own rules, goofing off, and completely avoiding responsibilities. Shin-chan, confused, tells his parents to stop acting weird. He pleads with them to do what they're supposed to do as parents. When he tells his dad to get to work, Hiroshi simply replies, Shin-chan doesn't get mad, he gets scared. Because for his entire life, his parents have been the ones leading him. They've been his constant, disciplining him, feeding him, protecting him, and now they've just stopped. Not knowing what else to do, Shin-chan falls back on routine. He takes over as the adult of the house, gets himself ready, and heads to school with Himawari. But the world outside is unraveling too. Every adult he's met is slowly regressing into a childlike state. Then, just like that, all the adults get up and leave. Drawn to the 20th Century Expo, they abandon their lives to go live inside a fantasy of their childhoods. Meanwhile, the children are just left behind, not brainwashed, just alone. Because children don't have a past to return to. They haven't lived long enough to feel nostalgic. Whether it's boring, unfair, or beautiful, they accept their reality and live fully in the present. And in that way, they become the film's only hope for a future. So with the adults gone, Shin-chan and his friends, better known as the Kasukabe Defense Force, get together in order to find a way to bring the adults of the town back from the ones who took them, Ken and Chako. But Ken and Chako aren't really villains, and they're certainly not evil. They're just heartbroken. When we first meet them, they're in the middle of executing their brainwashing plans. Typical villain stuff. But then something unexpected happens. They step through a side door and into a quiet alleyway. The tone shifts, and an old Showa-era song begins to play. They walk together through a frozen-in-time town, one that's been designed to look exactly like Japan decades ago. People in the streets are laughing, shopping, chatting like they used to. And for the first time, we get a glimpse into Ken and Chako's minds. Not as villains, but as mourners. They talk about how this place, though artificial, gives them relief. Relief because in this world, people still have dreams. They still believe in a future. Outside, in the real world, people are lost, trapped in dead-end jobs, mindless consumerism, and quiet despair, buying things just to feel something, distracting themselves because hope no longer feels like an option. And that's why Ken and Chako created this false world, not to control people, but to save them, to bring them back to a time when they still felt alive. In one of the film's most beautiful scenes, they stand in their recreated sunset town, gazing out the window of their two-story home as nostalgic music plays in the background. There's no scheming here, no monologue, just two people trying to hold on to a world that's already gone. In that moment, you realize they're not evil, they're just sad, and deeply, painfully alone. And maybe the most heartbreaking part is this: their plan wasn't to rule the world, it was to rewind it, back to the last time it made sense. But the deeper they sink into their emotions, the more they lose sight of reality. Their grief turns into control. What began as a dream to revive a happier world slowly becomes something darker, and eventually, they start kidnapping the children, hoping to one day raise them in that same fantasy world once they've forgotten their own. As the soldiers round up nearly all of the children, it seems like the Kasukabe Defense Force are the only ones left. They break their way into the expo, where all but Shin-chan, Himawari, and Shiro are captured. As they wander through the halls, they come across a door, the words Expo 70 plastered on it. It's the same place Hiroshi was pretending to be a superhero in at the very start of the movie. They step through the door, and what follows is the scene that made me want to make this entire video. It's a scene that still makes me cry even if I just think about it a little bit. We see Shin-chan spot a boy crying to his parents, upset that he didn't get a chance to see the moonrocks brought for the expo. Shin-chan immediately recognizes the boy as his dad and walks up to him, asking him to come back. But Hiroshi doesn't recognize him at all. He's too deep into his fantasy. So Shin-chan does the only thing he could think of to bring his father back. He pulls Hiroshi's shoes off of his notoriously smelly feet and makes him breathe in the smell just to remind him of what's real. And suddenly, the screen fades to white. What we see next is a dreamlike montage of Hiroshi's life. We see him grow up, one moment with his father, another with a girl from school, but ultimately alone. And as he grows older, life starts to weigh him down. He becomes a salaryman, his world gets grayer, smaller, he lives alone, he goes to work, comes back, and repeats it. But suddenly, there's a glimpse of something else. He's walking with a young Misae under a road filled with cherry blossoms, and just like that, the world looks soft to him again. Misae gives birth to Shinosuke and they move into a house together, and meanwhile Hiroshi can't stop smiling. And even though he's working himself to the bone, wiping sweat from his forehead in the summer heat, sleeping on crowded trains, pushing through the exhaustion of a job that may never pay off the mortgage, when he opens the door to his home each night, he's greeted by something real. A wife and 2 kids that love him, a life that isn't perfect, but one that is full of love. And even though life is complicated, it has meaning, with people to care for. And just like that, he's become to Shinosuke and Himawari the same person that his father was to him at their age. And as he wakes up from the dream, we see Hiroshi back to his old self, laying on the ground and holding Shin-chan, unable to stop himself from crying, not because he's sad, but because he remembers what he has.
父ちゃん、オラがわかる?
Together they go and find Misae and wake her from her own nostalgia. Finally reunited, the Nohara family races to the top of the expo tower, determined to stop Ken and Chako's final plan to brainwash the entire nation. As they fight their way up the tower, each family member is slowly separated, protecting one another from guards until only Shin-chan is left. He becomes everyone's last hope. Meanwhile, inside the Showa-era replica town, the adults watch from their old CRTVs, holding their breath. Shin-chan stumbles up the stairs, falling, getting back up, falling again. He's completely exhausted but refuses to give up. He finally reaches the control room, only to find Ken and Chako already there. He throws himself at Ken's leg over and over, trying to stop him, but he's too weak, and Ken easily kicks him aside. Still, Shin-chan doesn't give up. And as the people below watch this little kid keep fighting just to hold on to his family, it begins to click. They realize what Hiroshi realized, that life may be hard, but it's still worth living. And one by one, they start leaving the nostalgic town behind. Ken finally understands. The people don't want the past as badly as he thought. He never meant to hurt anyone, he just believed everyone felt the same pain he did. But now, faced with a world that has moved on, he feels lost again. Unable to face a future without meaning, Ken and Chako quietly walk toward the edge of the tower. Hiroshi yells to stop them, but they don't listen. Just as they're about to take the final step, a pigeon lands in front of them. That small, absurd moment breaks the silence. It's not some grand epiphany, just a nudge, a reminder that maybe the world isn't done with them yet. Then, Shin-chan, confused and thinking they were going to bungee jump, shouts,
どうして? またヒュンってなったの?
And there we have it. Just like that, they choose to live. Not because they've learned to love the world, but because it's better than giving up on it. In the final minutes of the movie, we see the Showa-era town completely empty, frozen in time. Ken and Chaco drive off into the sunset not with a plan, but with a willingness to keep going. And at the very end, the Nohara family walks through their front door, tired, scraped up, but smiling. There's no magical ending to this movie. The town doesn't suddenly get a new economy, the Noharas still have bills to pay, and Hiroshi will still ride the packed train tomorrow, but they're together, and that's enough. I love this movie because, in a way, I see myself in it, both as Hiroshi and Shinosuke. When I was a kid, I didn't understand why my parents acted the way they did. I thought they were just being embarrassing, stuck in the past. I didn't know what it meant to miss a time you couldn't get back to, but as I've grown up, the memories I've made as a kid have become the things I think about the most. And somewhere along the way, I became Hiroshi, constantly distracting myself with the past just to get through the present. What I didn't realize is that in doing that, I was ignoring the one thing that had stayed with me all along. The people around me, my family, my friends, the ones who would give me a reason to keep going. I used to spend whole nights in my room looping old songs, rewatching old movies, trying to recreate a feeling, not realizing that the time I was spending looking back, I could have spent making new memories with the people I love. And honestly, I'm still guilty of this now. Sometimes the future feels impossible to imagine. The world can be overwhelming. And yeah, there are days when it feels easier to give up, but clinging to the past won't help me either. I'm not going to pretend I suddenly see a bright, clear future for myself, but I do see the people who love me, who I want to be here for. And that's enough for me to keep going, not with blind hope, but with a promise to not give up. So if you ask me, would you trade your life now just to relive your childhood? No. No, I wouldn't.
知るところから始まるものでしょう